I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to say this is the first time I've attempted to have a meeting working this way, so that the pictures are there. I had really good instruction from Carl and good practice from Diane, but for some reason, I'm not getting the pictures of people. I'm just seeing your initials, but I do see your initials, and we'll go forward from there. We're in a time of change and adapting and working
Michael
our
Brown,
way through
City of
new
Ottawa
things.
representative.
Is now joining.
Welcome, Michael. So we've just started the meeting a few seconds ago. Is Francois on?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Excellent. I didn't catch that name going through earlier, so thank you very much. So we're ready to move forward, and we're into change as a part of all of our lives always, and this seems like a more significant change, and we've gone through a heck of a lot over the last few months, but we're moving forward, and I think that's good. You remember that the annual meeting was postponed definitely, and during the meeting today, we may say something about it, but I suspect you'll hear that we'll be dealing with it in August or September as we move along. I don't think I have any other comments except that if this goes reasonably well, it's the good instruction I got from Carl and the practice with Diane. And if it doesn't go well, it may be that the student didn't listen and learn as well as he could have. So we're ready to go forward from there, and I'm ready to move into the agenda. And the first item is approval of the SNC Board of Director main and supplemental agendas. And the recommendation, I have it on the screen in front of me, is the Board of Directors approve the June 18th, 2020 Board of Directors main and supplemental agendas as submitted. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Doug Thompson move.
Moved by Doug, and I see that hand up. Seconded by?
I see a
Michael
hand
Brown.
up. Sorry.
I didn't hear. Peggy? Okay, so moved and seconded. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, sorry, I couldn't get in there. I was hoping to postpone item H on the new business, item 6, item H, just to seek, that's on the hazard land acquisition reserve, and I was looking to seek just a little bit of additional clarification from our auditors at Baker Tilly regarding the appropriate methodology they would like to see for establishing that hazard land reserve. So I just wanted to seek a little additional advice and get to a little bit more firm direction from them.
So postponed definitely to the next meeting?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and there is a supplemental agenda, and there is an in-camera session, and you've heard the information on all of that. And as we go forward, we'll make sure we are all reminded of what to and how to. So I do have a recommendation, or the motion before me on the recommendation, and it has been duly moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? And that incorporates that H will be postponed definitely. Seeing none, and Carl, you're going to help me here, but I guess what I do now with everybody on is ask for agreement, and people hit their hand. Is that correct?
Some of them will have access to the raised hand feature and some won't. So I think as you did last time, Mr. Chair, with checking in with people asking for a mover and seconder, those that you see, you can get a visual raised hand. And if they digitally raise their hand, you can use that also.
I only have initials on my screen, unfortunately, and but the hands do come up beside the initials, so we should be okay. All right, then, is there any objection to this? Seeing or hearing none, I declare that the minutes have been approved and the supplemental agendas have been approved. Declaration of conflict of interest. Is there anyone that wishes to make a declaration? Hearing none, moving on to number 4,
Sorry.
SNC project update PowerPoint presentation staff.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Sorry,
Go
it's
ahead.
Peggy. I used I'm trying to use the raise your hand, lower your hand thing. I did have a conflict of interest, which was sent in yesterday with respect to the Communications Committee meeting.
Duly noted and understood.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the only one I've heard. So hearing no others, I'm moving on to number 4. Go ahead, staff.
that's okay, Al.
Okay, staff coming on for the PowerPoint, please. Allison, or can someone take the slide?
Yep. Sorry,
Thank
I'm
you.
here. Good morning, board members. So we just wanted to introduce our summer students. We have Alicia House, who's returning. She was with us in 2018, and she will be the assistant to the general manager. We're also happy to welcome Mary Louise Sturman as our approvals student and Cassandra Leving as an engineering student. All of these students are joining us as co-ops through the the University of Ottawa co-op program. So we're happy to have them.
Good morning, members of the board. I have a series of updates to share this morning, and if possible, I'll try and work through my comments before addressing questions, should the chair permit, and of course, before passing on to one of our team members. First, I wanted to share the reminder that we do prepare annual municipal work plans every year to help guide our program and project delivery in each of our municipalities. We do create and review these products every spring to help map out and address our resource needs throughout the jurisdiction. As you know, we generally present these work plans directly to senior staff at each municipality and share with our municipal councils to help our elected officials better understand our work in their respective areas. And though we did not meet face-to-face with our partners this year, I do want to remind you that these documents have been shared with our partners and uploaded directly to our website at the link provided. Should you wish to discuss further or receive your own copy, please just let us know. Your CAOs will each also have their own copies and information to share. Next slide. My next update is on our Ottawa Ash Tree Replacement Program, which was renewed by the City of Ottawa for another year of funding. This program, as you know, helps provide 50% cost share funding to help remove and replace ash trees on private property within the City of Ottawa due to the invasive emerald ash borer. This will be the third year of the program, and with increased demand, we're already processing several applications a day. To note, applicants who received funding in 2019 have until June 30th, 2020 to complete their projects unless an extension was provided. And though we're already accepting and processing new applications, we will be launching a targeted advertising campaign in July. Feel free to share these program details with Ottawa residents with infected ash trees, and of course, let us know if there are any questions. We do administer this program within the City of Ottawa on behalf of the 3 Conservation Authority partners. Next slide, please.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question of, I believe that's John?
Yeah.
We have that, you have that program with the City of Ottawa on private lands. Does the City of Ottawa or South Nation have any partnership for lands owned by the City of Ottawa? South Dundas is looking at trying to implement a program for lands for South Dundas ash tree replacement program. And I know we had the private land owner program, but does the City of Ottawa or city partner with the South Nation on their lands or just private lands?
Certainly, as a public landholder, we do have a responsibility to manage our own forest, and that involves removing and replacing ash trees. The city did come out, I think, in 2009 with their own program to help manage ash trees on their public property. And they have since removed, most of their trees themselves already through their forestry teams. We, as you know, also have thousands of ash trees throughout our properties, and we've been working through a multi-year approach to help replace them. So that's ongoing. And if the municipality wants any advice or wants to know how we went about doing it, we'd be happy to discuss further.
Yeah, I directed staff to take a look at, and I think they have the program through the website and whatnot, and they're going to take that into consideration when they were implementing a program on South Dundas's lands. Thank you.
Absolutely, for sure. On
Thanks,
this
Archie.
slide, sorry, thank you. On this slide, as you know, many of our community events have been canceled this year, including our canoe and kayak races that we generally support every summer. And like your board discretionary funding, our community environmental grants program supports a variety of different projects and events like these that help connect people to their local waterways and help improve their local environment. Our staff and communications committee member have reviewed our community grant program criteria and have recommended a program guideline amendment to help better use community funding during this time. I wanted to note that this recommendation discussion is included in your board agenda packages today within the committee minutes. Next slide, please. Now, before sharing our monthly stats on our conservation area uses, I wanted to share a few photos with you all. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, we've discussed the importance of our natural public assets and how important our park and trail systems have been to protect or give people in our watershed communities a place to go. And though we continue to experience record visitation in our spaces, we do continue to receive a record number of messages from people thanking us for maintaining these places. Next slide. We do receive questions on our park systems and recreational opportunities every day. And we also receive an overwhelming number of photos from grateful trail users. So whether it to remind us that they are keeping their dogs on a leash or that their families rely on these outdoor spaces, these photos have been really great to see. Next slide. Lots of people have continued to step outdoors and into nature at our conservation areas, and our staff have continued to maintain our spaces while ensuring that our maintenance and restoration projects can proceed. Next slide. And I think on behalf of our hundreds of photo submissions that we've received, we wanted to say thank you for supporting our priority to maintain our public and natural spaces in Eastern Ontario. Picture at the bottom left is North Stormont Councillor and Board Member Steve Densham and his wife Adele at the Warwick Forest. Thank you for sharing your photos with us. And next slide. We've included 3 graphs in your packages today to better explain what we're experiencing at our conservation areas. The first provides the total visitation totals tracked at all of our car and trail counters at our conservation areas in May. The stats in green show only the number of visitors recorded after May 19th, once we received the provincial order and direction to open our remaining river access spaces. Basically, the blue ones are a month's worth of data, and the green icons are a week and a half worth of data. Which brings us to the next slide, which does show the historical trend for May. The slide demonstrates that our spaces continue to receive record visitation, and all of our sites where records were not reached obviously know that that 2020 comparison is only for a week and a half of data we received, further demonstrating how actively our spaces are being used. And the final slide on this topic provides a snapshot, next slide please, of the amount of visitation that we've recorded at each of our open conservation areas in previous years in May. We are, as you can appreciate, experiencing twice the usual average foot traffic in all of our spaces. The following slide is to identify, per our staff and committee direction, that our annual Friends of SNC golf tournament has been canceled this year, as most of you can expect, especially considering the cancellation of our partner tournaments. And next slide, though it is sad to miss a day in the sun and on the course, I do want to remind our observers that our golf tournament revenue does help support one project every year. And every year we do generally raise between $5,000 and $10,000, which goes a long way to support various projects, including, our Maple education program, the creation of a new park, the establishment of our Forest Stewards program. And this project, or this tournament rather, has also funded replacement docks at Justice Falls and High Falls in the past. So it has been a really great activity to host in the summer. And though we look, next slide, towards other fundraising options for the fall, we do have some good news to share with you. It's not all bad. We have been successful in securing some funding from the United Counties of Prescott and Russell for some replacement dock projects in Embrun and Russell. They'll be going or being installed later, hopefully this year, in St. Albert at the St. Albert Conservation Area and at the Embrun Boat Launch in Russell Township. We have begun work with each municipality and plan to build new docks this year, and project signs will be going up in the coming weeks at these sites. And next slide, which is also my last slide, and realizing it's my last slide, I probably should have done better to end on a positive note, but I do want to share our decision with you all to cancel our 2020 youth fish camps. You may note that staff provided an appropriate and approved plan and recommendation to our recent communications committee meeting on how to best proceed with our camps, which were approved by our public health partners. But since the program relies so heavily on the support of volunteers and summer students to support the camps, we did have to make the difficult decision to cancel our programming in light of our current situation. And if I can provide or turn it into a positive note, I would just like to say that we as staff, we have our volunteers, our committee members, and our community partners to thank for our continued success on this program, whether it be, businesses donating fishing rods or volunteers from the Water Rangers or the Ottawa Fly Fisher Society. We really do sincerely want to say thank you for our continued success over the last 12 years. And of course, we look forward to bringing our camps back next year. And now, Mr. Chair, I think that's the end of my updates, if there are questions.
Chair Bill, it's Doug Thompson. I have a question for John. John, at the communication meeting, you talked about, and maybe you will later, about the phenomenal increase in Facebook and Twitter. Are you going to talk about that later, or if not, I think the board would be very interested to see the phenomenal increase in those two items.
Yeah, certainly. I didn't intend to speak about it later, but if I can provide a comment to that effect, I mean, yes, we've seen lots of increased use, but traffic on our website and our social media platforms. Website alone, I mean, generally we're looking at about 5,000 to 6,000 people interacting with our websites, downloading our forms, applying for various grant programs, and we've seen almost 17,000 people within the month of May. So whether it's the website or our social media networks, we're getting a lot of traction, a lot of messages, a lot of people that we've had a chance to engage with through the pandemic. So it's been crazy, it's been great, and we're looking forward to the engagements.
Thank you very much. Any further questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
It's Steve Densham. I said it last time and I have to say it again. Thank you so much for the great work the staff is doing. I do believe that many of the outdoor activities, the trails, et cetera, are very much helping during the pandemic with, mental health and opportunities for kids to get out and stretch their legs in a safe environment. I'm just wondering whether or not as well, because I see also on Facebook a lot of parents looking for distance education type opportunities to teach their kids. And I'm wondering if there's any comments you want to make on how South Nation may be helping to support that, and whether or not, we could do things like bingo cards, where if a kid is out at a particular area where they could locate different leaves or different animals or different tree types and things like that, that might help parents as well use all of the offerings that South Nation has to even supplement their distance education work.
Yeah, of course. 2 quick comments if I can. I mean, yes, we've created a few bingo sheets that we posted online, one specifically around Earth Day and one around our litter campaign. So some are activity focused, where we're trying to get families out and get them to come back with a reason and give them something to do when they're outside. So we're definitely looking to continue making some of those resources. And the other one is we do have watershed adventure kits with programming in place already that we've been lending out to homeschools and teachers doing distance and online learning as well. So those are really great resources that we continue to use.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think your comments are relevant and any of us could make them. So thank you for making them. Any other comments or questions for John?
Yeah, Chair Pierre Leroux here.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to make a comment. I know the golf tournament is usually a good fundraiser for us for, to help the community and stuff. And, with social distancing the way it is, perhaps paintball would be a good alternative. I know I'd pay to shoot a few people, so that might bring some people out.
We're definitely looking forward to a good alternative, so we'll keep that one in mind, Mayor LaRue.
We could put a target on your back, Pierre.
Were you looking at me, Pierre? And I don't know.
I think there's already a target on my back. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Is there any other comment? Hearing none. Thank you very much for the PowerPoint presentation. I'm ready to move on to number 5. This would be a request.
Mr. Chair, there's a few colleagues of mine that have something to share, if that's okay. Apologies.
That is excellent.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to let you know that Fred Schuler and Anita Karstad, longtime members of our Fish and Wildlife Committee and very strong supporters of SNC, recently won the Glenn Davis Conservation Leadership Prize. The prize awards $10,000 to individuals who've played a key role in bringing meaningful protections to identifiable land or aquatic ecosystems, or led a foundational initiative regarding species or spaces in Canada. So the award was established by World Wildlife Fund Canada and the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, and it's awarded annually. Alita and Fred are so very deserving of this recognition. They work tirelessly to study, understand, appreciate, and protect the natural environment. So I'm sure you all join me in giving them a very heartfelt congratulations.
And we certainly do. And I might say that when they were introduced and the comment was made at a previous meeting of the committee, they were very humble as well as deserving. They were very humble and kind of passed it off as, you know, but they are deserving. So thank you for that very, very much, Michelle. Anyone else?
And the next slide is about some of our monitoring efforts. For the past few weeks, we've been completing monitoring of the grasslands SNC restored for species at-risk birds. The sites are on 2 SNC properties and at the Upper Canada Migratory Bird Sanctuary. This is the final year of monitoring as required under the overall benefit permit, which guided the restoration. We're very happy with the results as the 2 target species are using the habitat. Bobolink, which is seen in the photo on the top left. They've been seen consistently. And finally, this year, we observed eastern meadowlark, which is the photo on the bottom. Apologies for the quality. The bird was very far away for the photo. Moving forward, we will continue to monitor the sites every 5 years for birds, and we're going to mow the grasses every 3 years to maintain the habitat. And then another type of rare habitat we've been monitoring are the vernal pools. Hopefully you tuned into last week's Nature at Home video and you're all experts about vernal pools now. We created a series of these pools on 2 SNC properties. You can see an example of one of the pools in the photo. This was part of a partnership project with Environment and Climate Change Canada. We were able to install acoustic recording units at the sites early in the spring to record frog calling. Unfortunately, Environment Canada put a hold on all work related to the project once COVID-19 hit, so we were unable to visit the ponds and monitor water levels and frog activity. They've since resumed our contract, so we're going to go through the recordings, see if we captured any frog calling, and then the monitoring we missed this spring will carry over into the spring of 2021.
Questions of Michelle? Hearing none, thank you. Further? Pat?
Good morning, everyone. The working forest, just an update on some of the late winter harvests that occurred through January and February. The harvest is now complete. We continue to monitor the harvest operation, and we completed 11 inspections through that. The harvest was completed in compliance with the standard operating procedures that we have to meet to retain our Ortis certification. The harvest volumes are listed there. The end result is that we received over $40,000 in revenue.
Questions of Pat? Thank you very much, and it's always good to hear that. And it has been good speaking with different groups in our municipalities about the importance of logging and having these operations for the health of the forest. That was a surprise to some people, Pat.
Good morning,
Rhonda?
members of the board. On your screen, you'll see a map indicating the locations of the SDNG roadside tree planting sites. These are from 2010 to 2019. There are 32 sites in total. 19 continue to be monitored and tended, and 13 are considered free to grow. Next week, our staff will be planting an additional 695 trees for 2020. They'll be building on 4 of the existing sites, tending and refilling 5 of the existing sites, and planting 1 new site at County Road 12 and Ashburn Road.
Questions of Rhonda?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Rhonda, how many trees were planted in SDNG on the roadside program? I didn't catch that.
I'm sorry, Archie, I don't have a total number of trees. I can get that for you. It's 32 sites. So I can follow up with the total number of trees for you.
No, it's not necessary. I was just, okay. Yep, 32 sites in SDNG. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And just an update, last month we did give you a quick update on our tree planting program and success for 2020. Just wanted to provide you this month with a breakdown of the tree planting by municipalities. So the chart indicates the number of landowners in each municipality, as well as the number of trees that were planted. These are for both the 50 million tree program and our over-the-counter sales program. So again, we planted over just over 140,000 trees this year, which is an increase from last year's record of 127. So we continue to see success in growing numbers in our tree planting program.
I have one question for you, Rhonda. You did say that you're going to replace the trees along the roads, and I think that's excellent. But because it's getting late and it's been so dry, will there be watering or further tendering, or are we going to leave them on their own?
So we do plant potted stalks, so they are a bit hardier than planting seedlings, but our staff will have a water tank on site when they're planting, and we will ensure that they get a good drink, and we'll follow up with additional waterings if needed. We normally do this planting in the fall. This year operationally, we've made the switch to a spring planting instead.
Further questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, Rhonda. Is there further comments? Are there further comments? I did not receive a copy or did not notice a copy of the slide presentation, so I apologize for almost cutting some people off. I'm presuming we're finished at this stage. Are you able to, oh no, Sandra, go ahead.
Good morning, board members. I'm happy to be presenting today from the office. So the first slide that I have today is making science-based decisions. So we apply for funding to the Clean Water Committee, and they approve Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program funding for 2 of our projects. The first one is a climate station. The climate station is going to be located in Ottawa, specifically in SNC 155, that is just in Marcella Drive property, just outside of McCaff. So that station will provide real-time precipitation and climate information. The data will be transmitted hourly to our WISKI, is a water data management program, and we will use that data for emergency management and flood forecasting and warning. The picture that you can see in the slide, that's the latest climate station that was built last year in Russell. So the new one will look something like this. The second project is the water budget. So the water budget, no, the slide before, thank you, Carol. The second project is a water budget. What we are proposing is to update the water budget for the South Nation watershed. So it will be the phase 1 of the water budget, and what we will do is review the current conditions of the watershed, that they have changed a lot from the last time that we prepared the water budget, that it was in 2008. So we will research future climate, land use, and water demand scenarios, and consult with municipalities and experts to determine the best way to move forward with the water budget update. Both projects receive $9,500. We apply for $10,000 and we receive $9,500.
Questions of Sandra?
The next slide.
Before you go on, will there be ongoing updates on how these are operating, just for information?
Yes, there will be updates, and I want in the near future we can have a presentation how we are working now with emergency management. We have a new tool that it will be good to bring to the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
The next slide shows the flood prone area map. Remember the last meeting, it was a request of updating the map. Here in this slide, you can see the map shows the flood prone area for Ottawa River, South Nation River, and the St. Lawrence River. The yellow color is the flood prone area. The flood contingency plan has been updated and has been uploaded to the Board of Directors webpage.
Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you for that update. I know there has been some interest from South Dundas as to the floodplain prone areas. I don't know if this information can be, shared with the staff at South Dundas or any other municipality that may be interested in it. I know they were scheduled to have a delegation before COVID-19 hit, and hopefully we can get one once things open up a little bit. But could this, I guess, the paper version be shared in advance, or do you want, I don't know if you have any comment on that, or would you much sooner do a in-person delegation first?
We definitely can share it with the municipality. I have been talking with Shannon regarding having the presentation for council, and the idea was that it's better that we were in person to answer the questions directed to council. So if you think that we can go and make the presentation now, you just let us know and we will be happy to do it. Alison and I are going to be presenting whenever it is available for us.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll reach out to staff. I know
Yeah.
Mayor Byvelds is really interested in seeing the results of, we partly funded some of that,
Yeah.
through a partnership program. So I'll share that on. I've been informing them all along, but anyways, I'll let them know that, there is a possibility of something that can be done.
Yep. Thank you.
Further questions? Hearing none, go ahead, Sandra.
The next slide is an update on our flow forecasting and warning program. It has been a pretty busy year for the program and for the team. A total of 21 flood updates and watershed conditions statement were issued, and you can see in the screen Lower Ottawa River 3, South Nation River 7, and the St. Lawrence River 11. Right now, we downgraded the St. Lawrence River statement. It went from a flood watch to a shoreline condition statement. The Lake Ontario is close to peak, so the event was not even close to the 2017 and 2019 event. It was really below it. It's just to add to this, we are looking at water levels, and yes, everybody has noticed that the water levels are pretty low. We are updating the water response team, and if we don't have rain, we will be looking at watershed conditions and potentially declaring level 1 drought in the first week of July.
Further questions of anyone to Sandra? Go ahead, Sandra.
The next one is an update on the National Disaster Mitigation Program. The program closed on March 31st, 2020. That was the ending of all the projects that we had, but we still have hopes that it's going to come back in the future. SNC made a very good use of the federal funding. We were the first CES applying in 2016, and we obtained the funding. The slide shows to you a summary. From November 2016 to March 2020, SNC got funding for a total of 12 projects and 17 partners we had for those projects. The total budget that we got for all the projects is 2.7 million, and the NDMP funding was 1.3 million. If you go to the next slide, Carl, please. So the results, what we did with that money. So we updated 201 kilometers of floodplain mapping, 122 kilometers of hazard mapping. We designed an emergency management tool that can be used by all the municipalities. We have 2 mitigation projects, and one of them is in the screen. I bring you to the little picture in the middle. It shows the Edwardsburg Cardinal water treatment plant and the mitigation measure for the flooding from the St. Lawrence River. We had 2 dam assessments. The picture of the Castleman Dam is in the bottom. And one condition assessment that is the Chesterfield Dam and the repair of the concrete. And finally, we have 798 kilometers of LiDAR.
Questions of Sandra? One I have, Sandra, is you mentioned the partners in the last or second last slide. Were they mainly municipalities?
municipalities, counties. We had also OPG, and we have the San Lawrence, for the San Lawrence River. We have the town of Prescott municipality that actually did not belong to our jurisdiction. We also partner with the Racing Region Conservation Authority. So mainly municipalities and counties, but other stakeholders too.
Thank you. Hearing no other questions, I'll go to Allison.
Good morning, board members. Just two quick positive updates. We wanted to let you know that in the approvals department general, we've seen twice the number of septic permits to date compared to last year, and almost similar numbers in our regulations program. In planning, we're on par with last year, and of course this is interesting given the times we've been going through with the pandemic. Unfortunately, we've also seen a record number of occurrences and complaints. I think with more people being home, more people looking around at what neighbors are doing, keeping us very busy. But I'd like to point out that we have been able to meet our enhanced timelines that we committed to last year and meet our customer service standards. So I'm very proud of staff, and I'm very grateful for all the support that we've received to make this kind of run fairly smoothly. I also wanted to note we're working with the City of Ottawa on the expansion lands. This is a big file for us, and we're especially looking at where these expansion lands will overlap with hazards or natural heritage features. So we're happy to be working on that project and looking forward to building great new communities in the City of Ottawa. Next slide. Last slide from our friendly regulations officer, Jeff. He just wanted to share this great example of how we work with landowners. Two farmers were looking to complete some cleanouts and get some culverts replaced. And through Jeff's hard work with the drainage superintendent and the DFO, the Fisheries and Oceans, we were able to get them an exception for the timing window. And what this meant was they were able to get their fields planted, which is obviously very, very important for those landowners. Just a great example of how Jeff works with all these different stakeholders to try to get the best outcome for the environment and for the landowner.
Any questions on either of the last couple of slides? Hearing none, thank you very much for the great work that's being done and the explanations that have been given. So we're ready to move on. And the recommendation is that we're going to, let me see, it's the 5A. And it would be the members approve the Board of Directors meeting minutes on May 21st, 2020 as submitted. And I would ask Angela and John and Carl to help me out here with movers and seconders. So looking for a mover and a seconder. Pierre
Mr. Chair, I
moved.
have Pierre Leroux for mover and looking for a seconder.
I'll second that, Archie.
I've got Archie Mellon as a seconder.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or question?
Mr. Chair, it's Michael Brown. Is this on the board? This is the approval of the board meeting minutes, correct?
Yes, 5A.
Mr. Chair, I know at the last meeting, Mayor Leroux raised the question of the AGM, and I went through the minutes. I don't see it in there, but my question becomes this: why are we deferring the AGM? I want to be clear that I appreciate that COVID has presented many challenges, but I also question why we are uniquely unable to arrange for some form of, whether it's e-voting or something, why we're unable to have that meeting sooner than later. I think, like, I want to stress, I respect it's a large organization and I respect that, but I've been on other organizations. I've been a municipal councillor myself, and we have done e-meetings and we have done e-votes in the past, and I mean the distant past. I appreciate laws change and the Conservation Authority Act has its requirements, but I still think to myself, you know, I say this sort of half jokingly, if the President of the United States can be elected by mail-in ballots, then why can't we arrange for a vote, or at least an AGM to be held sooner than later, and arrange for voting to be done through an electronic means for effectively 13 voters? I question why that's not capable of being done. And I really feel strongly that it should be on the agenda sooner than later and not deferred any longer.
Thank you, Michael.
Chair,
When you made the quick comment, or you came in a minute late, Michael, and one of the things I commented on was that it had been deferred, but it would be coming up and a notice will be given for August or September unless someone tells me something differently. Did I hear someone else coming on?
It's Doug Thompson, and I appreciate Michael's comments. I think that we don't have a meeting in July. August, hopefully by September, we'll be back. I think the annual general meeting is sort of the highlight of the year for the South Nation. We have all the staff there. We usually have a speaker. So you're right, we need to have an AGM. I don't think that it's the end of the world if we wait until September, when hopefully we'll be in person. I think that that's a more appropriate way to handle it. I know there are a number of organizations that I'm with, and one in particular, our AGM was scheduled in June. We haven't been able to hold it, and there is provincial relaxation that you can delay an AGM. Matter of fact, you are required to hold it within 3 months after the end of the state of emergency. So Michael is right, we do need to have it, but we're talking about waiting till September. I don't think the sky is falling in that we haven't had our AGM, and so I would look forward to having it in September, and hopefully we'll have everyone back face to face, and I think that's an appropriate way to handle the AGM.
I might add as well, I'm going to go to Angela, but before I do that, I might add as well that rightly or wrongly, we asked and received input from various groups or authorities, if you like, and therefore we decided not to decide immediately, but perhaps the time has come to decide, and that's what I think we have agreed to. So Angela, can you add anything more for that?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I was just waiting to hear the discussion of the board. Two things. One, Michael will be aware I was waiting to see the direction of the Law Society and how they were proceeding with their AGM, Michael, and you'll know that they did schedule it for the month of August now. So I was awaiting that. And then I did seek the advice of council for the authority, discussing that with Alt, figuring at minimum, should we host the event and not be in person, that we would want a scrutineer such as Alt to conduct the elections so that no error of impropriety could be alleged. So we have sought that advice, and it was the advice of Alt that we not host certainly this month, and then consider hosting either in the month of August or September. So we're looking at those two dates as the next way we can reasonably proceed with that in terms of moving forward. So whether it's in person and whether it's in August or whether it's in September, we're certainly entertaining it for one of those two dates. So like I said, the two things, we were waiting to see how the Law Society did the elections, and they're moving ahead in August with an electronic methodology. And second thing is we did talk to Alt, and Alt felt it would be most prudent to sort of hold that business just a little tiny bit until things had unfolded a bit from the state of emergency.
Mr. Chair, just a clarification. I did come in sort of, I think, halfway through what you were saying, Mr. Chair, and what I heard was just simply we were deferring this, and I thought you were saying indefinitely, and I must admit that's what elicited that response. So thank you for the clarification. I candidly did not hear the entirety of that sentence, but what I thought you were saying was that it was being deferred indefinitely. That's not what I'm hearing, obviously.
No, I think you've interpreted it correctly now, and the points have been made well, so you will be hearing more. Angela, one quick question. Do we have to give a notice, and how much notice do we have to give? Is it 3 weeks, or is it, what's the notice time?
It's not a legislated notice, but our best practice is we usually go for about 20 days notice in advance of the AGM.
Okay, thanks very much. So we will follow through on that. Okay, is there further discussion?
Francois Saint-Amour has his hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Francois.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In the same topic, would we change the date of our AGM to coincide with the new AGM? I guess we'd have to amend our constitution.
It has already been so amended.
Okay, thank you.
Good point. Just to clarify, Francois, thank you. Is there anyone else that has comments, questions, thoughts that may help us before we go to the vote? Then we've read the motion. It's on my screen, probably yours as well. And we've been duly moved and seconded. So are there any objections? And then that means all in favor. So we've approved the minutes with the clarifications that have been given. All right, looking at the committee meetings, and they have really been crowded into the last 3 weeks. Just seems like there's been one after another. We have 5 committee meetings or standing committees to report. I'm going to suggest that we go through them one after the other, and we have one motion to approve them all. And I think that's the direction that's on. You'll have to help me with the page number. I think it might be page what?
The committee meeting summary is on pages 4 through 14, and I will put onto the record that this is the agenda item 5B, where member Peggy has declared a conflict of interest, so I believe she will not be participating, and I did see her hand. And then I did see also, Mr. Chair, the hand of Pierre Leroux, and I was wondering, Mayor Leroux, if you had a comment at this time or if you'd want to hold that.
No, it was just when he was calling for the vote, I was putting my hand up, that's all.
Thank you.
So I am looking at page 15. We will go through each of the committees and hear their updates, but we will try, unless there's objection, we'll do one recommendation and vote at the end of the 5 presentations. Is that agreeable? Seeing no objections, then we're looking first at the Forestry Committee meeting minutes, and that would be Rhonda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Forestry Committee met on June the 2nd. Like the board, all of our committee meetings were held virtually. Most of the updates I gave during the slideshow, so I'd be happy to answer any questions on the minutes if there's anything specific, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions of Rhonda? Hearing none. Fish and Wildlife and Rhonda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The same afternoon, June 2nd, the Fish and Wildlife Committee met. As Michelle mentioned, we had an opportunity to congratulate our chair and his wife on their award. We also provided several updates, which you heard in the slideshow, as well as some updates on the Ontario Power Generation Biodiversity Program that we're starting this year, and some of the catchment studies that we're wrapping one up for North Castor and starting a new one for Bear Brook. So again, I'm happy to answer any specific questions if there are any on the minutes.
Questions of board members? Hearing none, moving on to Roman numeral 3, Joint Occupation Health and Safety Meeting minutes of June 3rd. Rhonda or Hannah?
It will be myself, Mr. Chair. So again, our Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee meeting met on the 3rd. We did review 4 incidents. 2 were slip, trip, and falls that resulted in only minor bangs and bruises, no medical attention required. We did have 1 staff come in contact with poison parsnip while tree planting. They did develop a rash, but no additional medical attention was required. And our last one was a tick bite. The staff removed a few ticks the day they came out of the field, but there was one that was embedded on them they found a few days later. They did seek medical follow-up for a prescription on that one as a precautionary measure. The committee also received updates on our office and health inspections for the workplace. We reviewed several of our standard operating procedures, which we've been updating this year, as well as the COVID-19 health and safety operating procedures that we'll be updating shortly to again reflect the change in status from a limit of 5 maximum now to, a maximum of 10. So that procedure will continue to be updated as things progress during the pandemic.
I know that all of you have had the opportunity to review and go over these minutes and the recommendations from the minutes. I want to say that I'm impressed with the information and the sharing and the work that's done by the people involved with the Joint Occupation Health and Safety Committee. And it needs to be well done, but it is. So I'm impressed with them. Is there any additional question of Rhonda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Steve Densham.
Go ahead.
So and I apologize. I actually wanted to comment after the Fish and Wildlife Committee meeting minutes, but I didn't unmute quickly enough. And these comments probably aren't so much for Rhonda. It's more, I guess, a question of the board. When I looked at the Fish and Wildlife Committee meeting minutes and seeing all the comments around owls and bears and moose and fox and rabbits, et cetera, I was really encouraged by the fact that we take a holistic look. And we do know that Minister Urick has identified little brown bats as a species at risk in North Stormont specifically, and I realize there's more to that story, more behind that story, but really the point is, should South Nation be considering sending a letter of support, to Minister Urick for caring for endangered species in our area? And I'm thinking that, especially since we've been communicating with the minister, just how important it is that South Nation be involved in local decision making and local observations and having local knowledge and expertise. So I just wondered if there's any comments on that relative to the endangered species and the little brown bats.
Rhonda or Angela or anyone else, do you wish to speak to this or make comments?
I'll defer to Angela first if she has a comment.
Well, I think, we're anecdotally with the committees receiving their sightings, and we'll use that information in a way that may inform, what we're doing for something like natural heritage or our own programs and services in terms of sightings. However, as you know, there's a lot of variety on any particular species that's observed. So I think we want to be cautious about, we receive the information, we're glad to have it, but actual confirmed sighting, we wouldn't, in terms of a species at risk, we can't really confirm just based on anecdotal committee evidence. So while we're very supportive of collecting that information, I think it's great that the minister knows we have committees and volunteers and folks on the ground that help us with that. But in terms of like turning, one comment into a confirmed sighting, it's sometimes is challenging for us because it doesn't necessarily meet the way we collect the scientific data and how a technical staff or a confirmed staff would go out and confirm a sighting. So I think it's great that we let people know we have volunteers that help us with these committees and also that we have a healthy population. So I think that's something worth making Minister Urick aware of. So we'd be happy to pen a letter to the same.
Yes, thank you. And that really wasn't the point. I mean, the sightings indicate that we care about, I guess, what I'm taking from the sighting is the fact that we care about all species in our area. And really, I think more what I was asking is, given the fact that Minister Urick has already raised a concern around a specific endangered species in our area, should we be sending a letter of support for his concern in that area specifically? I think, like I say, given the fact that we've been very vocal about the fact that we don't want decisions being made unilaterally above us and without appropriate input, I'm wondering whether or not at least a letter of support recognizing the concern might be worth doing.
Sure, maybe something to talk a little bit more offline to figure out what exactly, we could discuss. I think, the extent of what we do as committees is gather the data that way. So I think, we can't comment on what's beyond the scope of what we think, but I think we can provide a general support for that legislation, though it lies with different ministries at different times as well.
Rhonda, anything further?
No,
Peggy
Mr. Chair,
Taylor has her hand
yes, I was just
raised.
going to say Peggy's hand is raised.
No, I see that on my screen, actually. I'm starting to notice that. Don't have a picture, but I see Peggy's hand up. Okay, but anything further from you, Rhonda, first?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Peggy.
I have a question with respect to page 6 of 7, or I guess it's on also page 34 rather, of the package. And the resolution says, very end of it, forest operations may increase rate of exposure to ticks in comparison to the general public. Just kind of trying to figure out why, or why it's worded like that. I mean, they're naturally, by the work that they do, I get that they're going to be exposed more, but what exactly are staff thinking about when they see that line there?
So I'll start, and then if Pat has anything to add, because again, as the supervisor, he did make the comment. So it was just a note that, of course, our forestry staff, they're walking through the bush. They're not on manicured trails where most people are walking. So it was just a note that their rate of exposure is higher given the nature of their work in comparison to, say, folks that are out in a forest on a groomed trail or something like that. I'm not sure if Pat has anything to add on that wording.
That was exactly the meaning behind the comment.
Okay, so it's basically, it's not that you're going to increase their rate of exposure, you're just recognizing that due to the nature of their work, they have an increased risk of contacting ticks.
Yes,
that's correct.
Good. Okay, just didn't read that way, and I thought, what are we saying here? Sorry,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands at the moment. And is there any further discussion on either 1 or 2 or 3, the Joint Occupation Health and Safety Committee?
Mr. Chair, it's Mike Brown. Just very briefly, and it's actually related to the previous comments. I just wanted to be clear, Mr. Chair, and I hope, I apologize if I came off as a bit grumpy in my comments about the AGM. As I say, I interpreted that when I came into the call that the AGM had been indefinitely postponed, and that was elicited my reaction. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I sincerely hope you didn't take my comments as being directed at you. It was just a frustration on a misunderstanding. Thank you.
I never assume anything like that, Michael. So you can rest assured that that's not a problem. Hearing no other comments, I'll wait a second. Then I'm ready to go to number 4, Clean Water Committee meeting minutes of June 8th. And Clean Water, this is being done by Rhonda again.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we had a very busy Clean Water meeting on June the 8th. This is the meeting where we typically are reviewing our first round of applications under the Clean Water Program, Ottawa Road Clean Water Program, and is our meeting to review applications under the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program. So lots of program applications reviewed and funding approved. We did review and approve 4 projects under the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program. Sandra mentioned 2 of them that were funded in the slideshow to South Nation. There were 2 projects that were approved to the University of Ottawa, both at $3,000 for some research work. We had 1 project that was declined as it scored lower than the 4 that were approved. We had 1 project approved under the Ottawa Road Clean Water Program, and we extended deadlines for 2 projects that were approved last year to give them another year to complete. Clean Water Program, we had 1 project that was requesting an extension until September of this year, which we approved. We reviewed and approved about 30 projects. 13 of them were approved for just over $51,000 in grants. Just a note, our grant budget this year is $60,000, so the committee did allocate a good portion of that. There's approximately $8,500 to $9,000 still available to allocate, which they'll be reviewing projects in September. We have 3 projects that are currently on a waiting list. Again, they were eligible but didn't meet the minimum scoring criteria to be approved at the June meeting. And then we had 6 projects that were deferred to September because they required additional information. This year we were not completing in-person site visits, so there was a little bit of a challenge sometimes getting the information that we needed for the committee to make a decision. So they had questions on 6 projects, which we are following up with the landowners, and we'll bring those 6 projects back to the September meeting for consideration.
And for any of you that were on the meeting, it was lengthy, it was thorough, there was good discussion, and I believe good decisions made as I listened in. So are there questions of anyone on item 4, Clean Water?
Chair Bill, it's Doug Thompson. I just wanted to echo your comments. You and I are on that committee, and it was probably one of the most difficult committees to deal with virtually, but Rhonda did an excellent job, and it was remarkable how well this meeting did go. As I said, it was very difficult to organize, but exceptional job.
As I mentioned at the beginning, we're in a time of change. We always are, but the changes here have been rather significant. And I think the staff is to be complimented over and over for the work they've done to make sure that we understand and that we are able to move forward. Are there further comments on item 4, clean water? Hearing none, moving on to communications. And John, you're in on this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smurl. There's some good summative comments and recommendations on page 17 of your agenda package. At our communications committee meeting, we did receive updates on our Nature at Home Facebook Live video series that airs every Thursday. We also talked, as Doug alluded to our social media and website use and some of those insights that we're seeing. And of course, we provided some updates on our free tree campaign that was delivered last month. The committee also recommended to the board to approve our annual municipal work plans, to request annual support for those community free tree campaigns, to recommend an amendment to our community environmental grants program, which would permit new applications temporarily in 2020 to help plant more trees in our community, so opening up 2 more streams of potential program funding there. We also discussed a revised fish camp program delivery should we proceed, but as I mentioned in my update previously, we have decided to cancel those camps. And of course, we sought the committee's approval to cancel our annual fundraiser, our golf tournament. Should there be questions, I'd be happy to discuss further.
Before I entertain questions, I want to say that I'm really impressed with the work that's been done by the staff over the last about 3 or 4 years to develop the work plans. And I believe there are 17 work plans that you're approving when you approve all of these reports in a few moments. And speaking of the couple of municipalities I deal with more than others, they are most impressed with having them. And I am really pleased to be able to read them.
Thank you.
Further
Mr. Chair.
comment? Hearing no further questions, I'll quickly read the recommendation and look for movers and seconders. The Board of Directors approved the actions and recommendations of the Forestry Committee meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2020, the Fish and Wildlife Committee meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2020, the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2020, the Clean Water Committee meeting minutes of June 8th, 2020, and the Communication Committee meeting minutes of June 10th, 2020. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Jerry, I move.
And I have Pierre Leroux as a seconder, Mr. Chair. So Jerry Couts as the mover and Pierre Leroux as seconder.
I got both of them, and thank you for confirming it. And is there further discussion? Is there any opposition? Then all approve, and I adapt to the recommendation is duly moved, seconded, and approved. We're ready to move forward then. Thank you very much. A lengthy report, but a really important one. And I've stressed with the committees when I'm at their meetings, the standing committees, that they are really quite important because the recommendations they make go to the board for approval. And so I believe they think them through well, and there's good discussion before they're brought forward. We're moving on to new business, 6A, request for approval, Camp Sheldrick Management Agreement. Eric, or is it Eric?
It will be Eric. Yeah.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members of the board. My report is found on pages 54 to 63 of your agenda package. As you recall, at the last February meeting, the board approved negotiating a renewal of the Camp Sheldrick Management Agreement that is set to expire at the end of June 2020. Camp Sheldrick is a Scouts Canada run camp in Winchester that is operated on land owned by the authority. Scouts Canada has been using and maintaining the SNC property for the past several decades. The new agreement, attached to your agenda package, was prepared by the authority's legal counsel, Alton Alt. The new agreement's term is for 5 years, beginning July 1st, 2020, and ending June 30th, 2025. The new agreement contains provisions for scheduling SNC use of the property, a termination clause, and terms for the removal of any structures in the event that the agreement is terminated. Scouts Canada volunteers are preparing a separate 5-year management plan to inform SNC on how they intend to use the property during the term of this agreement. The plan will also give notice of any planned development on the property, such as picnic shelters or other camping structures. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
And before questions, the major change, I believe, is it's a 5-year plan rather than, I think it was a 20-year plan before. I like the change to a 5-year plan. Thanks. Questions or comments? Peggy?
Has any other group ever expressed an interest in using that camp?
If I may start to answer, and then I'll look for more comments. I don't think generally for the whole thing, but other groups have asked and been able to use, with the agreement of all, when it's not being used by the Scouts, the opportunity to go there for meetings or for special events. And I'm talking about municipalities, for example. And Angela or others to comment, or Eric?
I think that's a good comment, Mr. Chair. We've been able to facilitate any access that's been requested of us with the Scouts group.
Thank you.
Further questions? Archie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe you can enlighten me. Does South Nation pay municipal taxes on that property?
I believe the answer is yes, but Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, I can confirm that the answer is yes, and I would, if anyone has an exact dollar amount, they can let me know. It's, would Pat or anyone else happen to know the exact dollar amount for taxes approximately per year? It's not very much, but we do pay taxes on it as like as a regular taxpayer.
Yeah.
I believe it's $400.
And
yeah, it would be classed, probably zoned as forested lands, or taxed at I'm assuming at the lower tax rate. I just my question is, like, if Scouts Canada puts any additions to that or improvements to that land, and they go through the permit process, which would trigger an impact reassessment. There could be some implications there if it's, if I don't know what their plans are, if they're, down the road, but it's just something I think we need to be aware of. I don't have any issue with the camp shelter and leasing it out to them, but I think when we look at down the road, any approvals on any new buildings and whatnot, just be aware that there could be a tax implications from an impact reassessment perspective.
Point well made. And to summarize, any properties we own, taxes are paid to the municipalities. And for further details, I think you can get those details if you wish them. But generally speaking, I think that comment is correct.
Chair Bill, it's Doug here. I had a question for Eric.
Go.
Eric, I heard you say that in the agreement there was a clause, if there was a termination of an agreement, that there would be proviso for removal of the structures. Is there the option that if there was a termination, that South Nation could purchase those buildings that are there?
As of now, that there's no provision regarding that. Basically, the concern is we don't want any structures left on the property in the case that we terminate the lease, because we would have to remove it at our own expense. So that clause drafted by Alton-Alt is really to make sure that we're not left footing the bill for if they walk away from whatever reason, or we're forced to terminate the lease. I mean, I assume we could negotiate that in that case if they're willing to sell, or if we want them, but there's so many factors, I think, that that we would just have to have an open conversation if it was beneficial to both parties, I believe.
Yeah, because there is this one structure there that I think is suitable for future use if the Scouts weren't there. So that's
right.
That would be my concern, but you feel comfortable that that could, in the case of a termination, that could be negotiated.
That could be a future discussion, but I support what Eric has said, and I support it because unless we have a reason for the building and a reason for retaining it and using it, I think the clause that says they will take them down is worthwhile. So future discussion for sure if we reach that stage. But I think it's a good comment to have included.
Yeah, that's satisfactory.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Anything further? And the motion is the SNC Board of Directors approve the Camp Sheldrick Management Agreement with Scouts Canada for a duration of 5 years, subject to final insurance review. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Francois, seconded by Peggy. Did I get that right, Angela?
I do see those hands, so that looks good to me.
Okay, so thank you very much. Discussion. Are there any objections? Then all in agreement? And I'm assuming the answer is yes, and therefore this recommendation has been approved. Moving on to B, 6B, request for approval, video surveillance policy. Carl.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The report is found on pages 64 to 67, including the draft policy. The staff leadership team have looked into installing cameras at 2 locations owned by SNC. One would be the administration building on the external entry doors facing out, and the second would be the Chesterville Dam at the control building main gate and showing the water level. There are several benefits to this, primarily the improved safety and security of staff and property. We have seen nuisance vandalism and theft at both locations, including one last night at the SNC office. We would like to also save some staff trips. We can get some important information on the water level at the dam, and ice breaking events at the dam would be it'd be great to see those on the video feed and save staff having to go out there. It's also an opportunity for public education. We're looking at building into the policy the opportunity to live feed water and ice levels and conditions at the Chesterville Dam to show the public how it operates. The best practice, as advised by our human resources lawyer, is to have a video surveillance policy in place to manage how that data is accessed and used. So that's why we're bringing this forward to the board. Any new policy requires board approval.
Just a quick question before I go to others, and that is, are we, when we approve this, do we have to have signs up saying it's under video surveillance for public information, etc.?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, and that is part of the policy. It's part of the requirements under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
I hope the OPP in Winchester had that recently, because I don't know if you noticed that a day or two ago, a trash barrel was thrown through the front door of the OPP office in Winchester. So, and I think it's worthwhile, but now we'll, for any further questions or comments of Carl.
Mr. Chair, I have Archie.
I have him.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Carl, you mentioned in your report there's no budget implications. What would be the cost of? I'm sure there's going to have to be some kind of cost to buy the video cameras or whatever. I get from the report that you're not indicating any kind of cost involved with this.
It's a good point in my oversight, Mr. Mellon. It's there are some small costs. It's all accounted for. We're doing this using smart technology. We're not using some large industrial installation. We'll be using IP cameras, which is basically internet cameras, to set up the feeds in a smart way, so that we're not. There are benefits to that as well, in that we don't have to have tapes and hard drives stored at places like the dam where they could be accessed and damaged and stolen. So it'll all be done at a very reasonable cost. it is taking some legal advice to put together the policy, which is within our legal budget. And the cameras we should be able to purchase them and set them up for under $1,500. We are installing internet access at the dam. We already did that, which is a small monthly cost of about $150, but that will give other benefits in terms of monitoring. We have a lot of monitoring equipment there that is being modernized in different phases. So we'll be able to use that internet connection in order to feed those water level gauges and feed that information in a smarter way. We're trying to get away from some of the old analog systems that we use at the dam anyway. So there's a lot of synergies here, and we're able to do this at a very reasonable cost and within our existing IT and information budgets.
Supplementary, Archie?
No, I think that pretty well answers it. Yeah, I just want to, when I didn't see any dollar amount in there, I sort of questioned that. But okay, thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Archie. Is there any further question or comment?
Mr. Chair, Michael Brown, just very supportive of the initiative. I think it's very sensible, and I entirely agree with Carl that there are mechanisms and camera services out there that are not as expensive as the full hard wiring of it, which we sometimes see in the movies. It's I myself use Blink, and it's quite effective and is not that expensive to install in your home.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion of approval of the Board of Directors approve the adoption of a video surveillance policy with final changes as required by legal counsel. Moved by Danielle, seconded by Peggy. By Peggy, I had. So duly moved and seconded. Did you get all of that, Diane? I think.
We're good here, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Yep, it's all good. Thanks.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing no one. Any objections? Then all in favor, and it's approved. Moving on to 6C. John.
Good morning again. Our report on pages 68 and 69 requests approval for 3 Conservation Authority projects taking place at the J. Henry Tweed, W. Barton Conservation Areas and at the future Augusta Conservation Area site. Annual maintenance, property improvements, and restoration projects are planned at our conservation areas every year, and from time to time we require professional services to support these work activities. The 3 project requests before you on page 68 are all included in the 2020 SNC budget. All of the expenses are over $10,000, which requires board approval. For each project, we would be proceeding with the lowest quote received to an approximate upset limit of $15,000 plus HST for each project. Within the J. Henry Tweed Conservation Area, we're looking to retain a surveyor to complete our shoreline restoration project, which is being funded, as you know, by Ontario Power Generation. So we've got 100% cost recovery on that expense. For the future conservation area in Augusta, we will be requiring the purchase of materials and some equipment expenses to help create that parking lot and trail we discussed previously at that site. Project funding has been received by the Government of Canada and will be covered 100% by that partner. At the W. Burton Conservation Area, we do have a number of ash trees that do require removal. Similar to our discussion previously, Councillor Mellon, this is the sort of activities we engage in to help manage some of our large-scale ash tree removal projects. We do require a contractor to help support removal of an additional 150 trees at this site. So we will be proceeding with the lowest quote to help remove those trees. Should there be any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
And I'll take questions in a second, but I'll go now to the recommendation. The Board of Directors approve conservation area expenditures, project expenditures at the J. Henry Tweed, the W. Burton and Augusta conservation areas for a total cost of approximately $45,000 plus HST. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Aye.
Archie Mallon moved.
I'll second it, Chair George.
and George seconded. Is now discussion and questions of John. John, it looks like it was well explained. Is there any objection to the recommendation? Then all in favor, and we approve. So we have approved item C. Moving
Thank you.
on to item, thanks, John. Moving on to item D, infrastructure, Sandra.
Sandra, you may be on mute.
I apologize for that. I finished doing all the presentation of my report in the mute. So my report is in page 70. You may recall that at the board meeting in February, the board of directors approved the submission to the water erosion control infrastructure funding, 2 projects, one in Chesterville and the second one was at Casaman. At the beginning of June, we received information that the project for the Chesterville Dam have been approved. The project is a continuation of the work that was completed in 2019 with the National Disaster Mitigation Program funding. So the project includes retaining qualified services to install a new furnace and replace corroded electrical connections. The total cost of the project is $80,000 and MNRF will be providing $40,000 under the WACI projects. We need to sign a transfer payment agreement to secure the funding. And I can answer any questions.
Okay, I'll take the recommendation first and we'll get movers and seconders. The Board of Directors approve undertaking the mitigation of flood risk at the Chesterville Dam Phase 2 project at approximately $80,000. And further that, the Board of Directors approves signing a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for the 2021 water and erosion control infrastructure funding. Mover, Danielle, seconder.
Jerry?
Pierre. And I got those on my screen quickly before I heard Jerry. So I'll take the 2 that I saw and noted. Is there any question, discussion for Sandra? Hearing none. Is there any objection? Hearing none. All in favor? And we approve. 6D. 6E. The Sandra again for further expenditures.
Yes, the report is in pages 71 and 72, and this is remember that I present about the on a slide talking about the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Committee and the approval that we have for the funding for the water budget update and for the climate station. So this report requires the approval to move ahead with both projects, and I will need approval also for the sole source, the purchase and installation of the equipment for the weather station. We have to sole source it because we need to ensure compatibility with the existing stations that we have and with the equipment that we have here in the office.
So the motion is that I'm going to read it all. The SNC Board of Directors approves submitting retroactive proposals to the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program for the Water Budget Update Phase 1 and the City of Ottawa Weather Station projects. And further that, the SNC Board of Directors approve expenditures to complete the Water Budget Update Phase 1 at an approximate $35,000 plus HST cost. And further that, SNC Board of Directors approve expenditures to complete the City of Ottawa Weather Station projects at approximately $22,000 plus HST. And further that, the SNC Board of Directors approve the sole sourcing, the purchase and installation of equipment for the City of Ottawa Weather Station to Forest Technology Services, FTS, at approximately $22,000 plus HST to ensure compatibility with the existing products. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Francois moves. Seconder?
Dana.
Dana has seconded. So duly moved and seconded. We're open to questions and comments on the explanations here. Peggy?
The weather station, who has access to that information?
The weather station. They have an echo, sorry. The weather station is that the information comes directly to us, and there is other stakeholders that can access the information. They have to request it through us.
Supplementary, Peggy?
So the stakeholders, are they the city of Ottawa, or are they, could they be residents, individual private residents?
The residents will access the data of the weather stations through the South Nation website. If you go in the South Nation website, you are going to see that there are graphics that they automatically download the information from the weather station. So they can access the information through the website.
Okay, Peggy, anything further?
Thank you. Thank you.
Archie?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I always, sort of get a little bit of a queasy feeling in my stomach when I see we sole source things. And from FTS, is that a requirement by them that we sole source through them to make sure the equipment is compatible with their existing monitoring network?
No.
Is that, or is that our,
yeah.
Is that our reasoning behind the sole sourcing?
So FTS is the company that is selling the equipment to all the provinces. So they have contracts with the province of Ontario and now with the different conservation authorities. So what we are doing is trying to be consistent with the rest of the CS and the province of Ontario, so we can share data and we can work together. So you remember that we bought 7 new stations under agri-risk. So that was our first step to moving forward to the new type of stations. These stations send the data through the satellite, and after it comes back to our water integration system. They are only two companies in Ontario, and this is the one that has won with the province to move forward at this stage.
Okay, it's all fine and dandy, but sometimes you wonder if you're getting the best. I guess we're getting the best value for our dollar, especially when we sole source. It just I have a thing at the municipal council table too about sole sourcing but sometimes it's necessary and it does work out in the end. But yeah, okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Peggy, did you have a supplementary question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Oh, okay, your hand is still up. That's why I was asking. Is there any further? Thanks, Peggy. Is there anything further? Any objections to this motion that's been duly, or this recommendation that's been duly moved and seconded? All in favor? It's approved. We're moving on to F, Rhonda, tree planting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report begins on page 73 and goes to page 75. Now that we've wrapped up 2020 tree planting, we're already looking ahead to the 2021 spring planting season. To do that, we require a few approvals from the board to get things in place for that tree plant. The first is regarding the purchase of seedlings and the fee that we charge to landowners, and the second is where we source those seedlings from. So I'll begin with the 50 million tree program. Again, this is a Forest Ontario program. South Nation is a delivery agent for 50 million trees, and it's for landowners that have 0.4 hectares or 1 acre of land or more for planting. They receive subsidies from Forest Ontario, but there is still a small cost to deliver that program. It covers things like site preparation, the actual planting by either South Nation staff or contractors, and tending services following up on the planting. In 2020, we have seen an increase cost to all of those contracted services. So in reviewing our fee schedule, which you'll find on page 75, we are recommending a small increase on trees that are purchased through the 50 million tree program. In the past, they were 20 cents for conifers and 50 cents for deciduous or hardwoods. And we'd like to increase that price by 5 cents per seedling. So the new price would be 25 cents per conifer and 55 cents per deciduous or hardwood in order to offset some of those additional costs. This would be effective as the board approves it and in place until the end of next May's tree planting season. Under the over-the-counter sales, this is again for landowners that have less than the 0.4 hectares to qualify for the 50 million trees. They can purchase trees from South Nation. It has in the past been set at the nursery stock cost plus 15%. Staff are recommending status quo on the over-the-counter sales. So again, the stock cost from the nursery plus 15% to cover our shipping and handling. And finally, we also at this time are seeking approval for the purchase of tree seedlings. It may seem far away, but we actually do need to put in our requested orders before the end of the year. So our staff will begin site visits for landowners next month. And we have probably about 70 on the waiting list already. So we're expecting another very good tree planting season. So the seedlings that we're purchasing for the last several years are mainly coming from Ferguson Forest Tree Nursery in Kemptville. It is one of the only 4 approved nurseries under Forest Ontario's 50 million tree program that we can source from to qualify for that funding for landowners. It's also our most local and provides seed source for this area. We will be requesting a sole source to Ferguson. We would like to get as much stock as possible from Ferguson. And then if we require supplementary stock that they're not able to provide, to go to one of the other 3 Forest Ontario approved sites to stock the necessary trees for the 2021 spring plant.
So the recommendation is the board of directors approve the 2021 tree planting fee schedule, and further that the board of directors approve the purchase of tree seedlings at approximately $135,000 plus HST, subject to approval of the 2021 budget, and further that the board of directors approve the sole source purchase of 2021 tree seedlings from Ferguson Tree Nursery or from other Forest Ontario approved nurseries if stock is not available locally at Ferguson Tree Nursery. Looking for a mover? Peggy Taylor and Archie seconded. Thanks very much. Questions, comments? Archie.
Thank you, Chairman Smurl. Once again, we're on sole sourcing here, and I like when we're talking 135,000. As much as I like keeping the business local in Ferguson and Kemptville, how sure are we if that we're getting a good dollar value? It's been my feelings and my findings over the years that if an industry or a company or a business know that they're being sole sourced by a municipality or a conservation authority, what do we have in place to have checks and balances to make sure we're getting dollar value for a good dollar value for those trees? That's my biggest concern. Like at 135,000, that's a lot of money, and if we're going to just sole source it to them, and you know, that's my problem with it.
So,
Ron,
Mr.
did
Chair,
you wish to respond?
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, we have dealt with several other nurseries on other programs, so we do have comparable price listings for the nurseries. The 4 that are approved by Forest Ontario and the province are really the only nurseries that actually have capacity to deliver the number of trees we need. What we lose on pricing at Ferguson for the few species out there, we gain back on the delivery fees. So all of the other nurseries that are approved are in southwestern Ontario. So the cost of shipping can be very, very high, you know, $500 to $1,500 depending on where they're coming from. So the price of seedlings is comparable between the 4 nurseries. Where we're saving a lot is on the actual delivery costs, given that Ferguson is local to us.
If I might add as well, I don't want to be taken advantage of, and I agree with the speaker that was there a moment ago, but don't ever forget that the seedlings that come locally are the ones that usually do the best in our area. And I think that's a factor that's worth a few cents or dollars. Further questions or comments?
Just a supplemental, Mr. Chair, if you will. Thank you for that. As long as staff isn't on top of that and making sure we're getting the dollar value that we need and have our price comparison, I guess, if you will. Thank you.
Thanks, Archie.
I will
Further?
say, I can add, Mr. Chair, that I've discussed it as well with the other general managers. It's something that's big programming for a few of the CAs that still do a lot of tree planting. So the general managers discuss it as well amongst themselves to look at the unit price per seedling. So we do that as well. And the pricing has been fair. If at any point in time it was not the case, and we found that there was an advantage to be had by sourcing stock outside the watershed, we would certainly, making sure that happens.
And if I might further add, Ferguson is in it for the business, and they're going to know what others are charging and how their prices go along with it. But I know the staff is on it, and thank you for that. I just wanted to add as well a reminder that last year, the 3 millionth tree was planted in the watershed at Camp Sheldrick. And a few weeks later, the 3 millionth and one tree was planted at South Nation. So we have those milestones behind us, and we're going towards the 4 million in the next few years. Duly moved and seconded. The recommendation has been put before you. Is there any objection? All in favor? And it's approved. So we have approved item F. Thank you, Rhonda. G, request for approval logging contracts, page 76, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report is on page 76. Following our schedule of harvests, we posted tenders on the SNC website on May 21st, and we also reminded the contractors of the posting on the following week, May 27th. We received one bid for all three tenders. They are listed in the table. The bids received for SNC 5 and 29. These are consistent with the unit pricing is consistent with the previous SNC wood sales, particularly those in January and February of this year. I also took the opportunity to contact some of the other local community forests to compare what they've been receiving, and the bids were consistently within the range of what they were receiving. Just to note that SNC 53 is a very small, low quality spruce plantation. We're doing the thinning in there for the benefit of the remaining trees, hence the lower bid on those. So we're recommending that we award these contracts, contractor A.
So the recommendation is thanks, Pat. The Board of Directors approves the award of contracts SNC 5/7-2020, SNC 29-2020, and SNC 53-2020 to contractor A. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Doug Thompson moved.
Moved by Doug, seconded by
Jerry Coates, all seconded.
Jerry, was it?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So duly moved and seconded. Further discussion or questions? And I mentioned earlier, the couple of the townships I've been associated with, or mostly involved with, were really surprised that it's really important to have regular thinning and regular working through the forest to keep them at their healthiest best. Hearing no further comments.
Mr. Chair, just it's Archie here. If you can, Pat, these thinnings and these cuttings, that'll be happening this summer or this winter coming?
This summer.
This summer, okay.
I guess it'd be this summer, as long as we don't have a drought or fire condition. I'll just add that.
Okay, so generally speaking, plan for this summer. Thank you, Archie. Thank you, Angela. If there are any further comments? Hearing or seeing none, duly moved and seconded. That we now, any objections? All in favor and approved. We're looking now at H, 6H. Request for approval, hazard land acquisition reserve. Oh, I'm sorry, that's postponed. I take it back. Section I, update, planning activity. Allison, 79 to 81.
Good morning. You'll see our monthly planning activity summary on those pages noted by Mr. Chairman. As well, you'll note the technical reviews, which are on page 81. Lots of stormwater management reviews, lots of site plan applications, and site plan applications indicate buildings being built, structures going up, new businesses, lots of work in Russell, UCPR, and Ottawa picking up as well. So very happy to see that development continues within our watershed and that the reviews are all being completed to ensure everything is safe and sound. So with that, the recommendation is to receive and file.
All right. Okay, yes, the recommendation, the Board of Directors receive and file a planning activity update. Sorry about the delay. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Steve Densham will move.
Steve's moved and Danielle seconds. Duly moved and seconded. Questions, comments for Allison? Hearing none. Any objections? All in favor? Approved. We're moving on to J. This would be request for approval of permits. It's an 82 to 83. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the members of the board. My usual housekeeping report can be found on the pages noted by the chairman, 82, 83, and it indicates the permits that have been issued since the last board meeting, May 8th. And I just wanted to apologize for my not formal attire today because I'm heading out into the field right after this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The recommendation is the SNC Board of Directors approve permits 56 to 72 issued under Ontario Regulation 170/06, development, interference with wetlands, and alterations to shorelines and watercourses. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Dana.
Dana moves. Pierre seconds. Are there questions of Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
George.
I just want to thank Jeff and, of course, the planning team, Allison and Angela, as usual. I know that we had an urgent project in Osgood Ward concerning gas line coming to the Carlton Mushroom, and I know you guys did an amazing job and worked through the process and help aligning all the job because we also had some paving happening at the same time. So I just want to thank you for really looking after this and being very professional and speed up the process for us. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Archie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I see, Jeff, in your report, there's two mentions of septic systems under your report. How do they relate to drainage? I would have thought they would have been somehow or another included in the septic review report or whatever.
Right. So what happens under the Conservation Authorities Act when a septic system is going to be placed in a regulated zone with respect to a natural hazard, let's say close to a floodplain, even though they still have to get their building permit from a NIC under Part 8 of the building code, they also need to get a permit under the hazards regulation to make sure that the effluent pipes are at the correct elevation to make sure that in the 100-year things don't back up into their house, and also the opposite, that their leaching field is high enough so that it doesn't go out and spill into the river water and cause pollution as well.
Okay, very good explanation. I just sort of thought maybe you were going to branch off into the septic program too. I didn't know. Thank you, Jeff.
I've got more than enough. Thank you very much.
Thanks to both of you. Further questions or comments?
Just point out too that if there's room on the site to move a septic so they don't have to get a permit, we're also glad to do that. But we only have a permit where they have to put the septic within a regulated area. So first step is to say, hey, can you build it outside and maybe not need one of these permits? And then step 2 is if you have to build it in a regulated area, here's how you can safely do it.
Thank you. Further? Hearing none, duly moved and seconded. Objections? All in favor? And it's carried. And therefore, we are finished item 6, all items in 6, except the one that's postponed. We're moving on to the financial report. Carl.
Good morning again, members of the board. This is the regular housekeeping financial report, which brings forward the monies received in disbursement register for May at this time. And I'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Before that, the Board of Directors receive and file the money received report for May 2020. And further that the board approved the disbursement register of $352,063.87 for May 2020. Mover and a seconder.
So moved, Chair. Michael Brown.
Michael moved.
George second.
George seconded. And is there discussion or questions of Carl? Hearing none, is there any objection? Hearing none, all in favor, and it's approved. Supplemental agenda, there is one, and we'll go to the supplemental now. And the first item is request for approval of the SNC community meeting highlights and the Leitrim committee. Rhonda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was the last of our committee meetings for the month of June, and it was held on June 12th, last Friday. The Leitrim Advisory Committee meets twice annually, usually spring and fall. It's a chance for the stakeholders to get together, receive updates from each other, and learn about what's planned for 2020. As you can imagine with COVID-19, a lot of the activities that would normally happen in the spring have either been canceled or postponed, including our tree giveaway. So that is being postponed to the fall. The Community Association's regular cleanup, they're hoping also to reschedule that to the fall. The committee did receive some updates on Finley Creek Boardwalk, the usage, update on the closure at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and of course that boardwalk is open now. We unfortunately are seeing some vandalism that was discussed at the committee, and some work amongst the partners to hopefully help slow down or stop the vandalism in that area. We also presented our fieldwork plan and work plan for 2020. Which includes our regular maintenance of the boardwalk, our regular monitoring for benthic and water quality around Finley Creek, as well as a project that Michelle spoke about with the potential to do some additional extensions onto the boardwalk. So we're keeping an eye out. There's some federal infrastructure funding that we're waiting for an announcement on that may be an appropriate funding mechanism to look at some additional work on the boardwalk. And of course, the community and the committee were very supportive of that. And then each of the partners provided some updates of work that they're doing in and around the Finley Creek area. So it was a very good meeting, and we will hopefully reconvene in person in the fall.
So the recommendation is the Board of Directors approve the actions and recommendations of the Leitrim Wetland Advisory Committee, LWAC, meeting minutes of June 12th, 2020. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Francois, seconded by Peggy. Is there any discussion? And to start the discussion, I might say that I was really interested in the report by the gentleman from the NCC, always interested in the community report and the City of Ottawa update. And from the community report, there was comment and concern, and the councillor, Ms. Meehan, was there, and she raised concerns about the rogue coyote or two that have been attacking people. And you may have seen that one has been shot in the area, and they're looking and watching for any others that may have been rogue, and the persons that were bitten had to go to the Civic for treatment and start the rabies treatment just in case. So I always appreciate those additional comments, and I think they're very valuable. So duly moved and seconded. Peggy, you have a question.
Yes, is there any signage about warning people against feeding the wild animals?
So just to clarify, the coyote issues were not being experienced in the Finley Creek. They're more in the Riverside South. So they're in Councillor Meehan's ward, but not actually on the boardwalk property or in and around Finley Creek community. We've not received any advisories of coyote sightings in that area. So John was also able to attend the call, and we'll be doing some follow-up with the councillor's office on some messaging through social media and other avenues about things like not feeding the wildlife. You may recall there were some issues late last year or early this year in Russell with coyote sightings too. So it's not just in City of Ottawa, it's being experienced elsewhere. And John and the communications team will work with Councillor Meehan's office on some messaging. John, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add on that.
No, that's perfect, Rhonda. Thank you.
Supplementary, Peggy?
No, thanks.
Anything further? Any other questions or comments from anyone? Then the motion to approve duly moved and seconded, read into the meeting and duly moved and seconded. Any objection? All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the second item in the supplemental agenda, and it is on page let me try again. Page
10,
well, it's
Mr.
the
Chair.
page that has the Board of Directors estimated statement of operation, and that's the one.
Page 10 and 11.
Thank you. For some reason they're not numbered on mine, but is Linda going to comment, or are you, Angela?
I can comment, and thanks, Chair Bill. Good morning, board members. This is just the monthly report that will be coming to you through to budget time. The senior staff do take time every month to review expenditures and revenues. And at this point in time, we're looking at a balanced bottom line. Thank you. I'm going to take questions.
The recommendation is the Board of Directors receive and file the estimated statement of operations for the year ending December 31st, 2020, as of May 31st, 2020 update. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Danielle, seconded by Peggy. Question, Danielle.
No questions, sir. I'm sorry.
Are there, it's okay. Are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, are there any objections? All in favor? The second item on the supplemental is approved, and that moves us. Is there anything else on the supplemental? I don't.
No, Mr. Chair,
so.
that's taken care of.
Okay, good. I'll move that out of the way here. And we're looking at the correspondence, and you have, well,
sorry,
the
Mr.
items,
Chair, on supplemental, it may give me an opportunity, and I apologize for doing a walk-on report. We have had an approval while we were sitting in this meeting that we may need to address just so that we can move ahead for it with it if the board agrees. Over the summer months, it turns out that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, through the Water and Erosion Control Infrastructure Project, has approved a second project at the Chrysler Dike. And so what has happened is through a number of negotiations, some projects have fallen off the erosion control projects at the provincial level. So each year the province provides $5 million for projects across Ontario. And we had asked for $38,500 that was actually denied. And that grant, as we've been sitting here, has come through from the minister's office now approving that $38,500 project. So I was wondering if we might do one of two things: walk that on as supplemental item right here on as part of the supplemental agenda, or do a friendly amendment, and I'll leave this to the board, friendly amendment to new business item 6D, which was Sandra's report on funding applications for infrastructure, and add that resolution to the that report there. So I put that to the board, and like I said, you can do it one of two ways: amending the resolution for item 6D, request for approval funding applications infrastructure Sandra, or accept it as a verbal report, and I could read in the potential resolution should the board wish to proceed with that. So that project was one that was allowing us to do an integrity assessment for the dike in Chrysler. So you know that the dike in Chrysler protects all of the infrastructure and housing and businesses that are adjacent in the town of Chrysler. The dike wall itself, we do vegetative removals on it on a periodic basis, and this dike integrity assessment is to ensure that the dike is in functioning order, and will be there to assure the protection of the infrastructure, residences, and businesses for the town of Chrysler in the township of North Stormont. So I could read in a potential resolution or entertain any discussion the board might have as to where you'd like to place this. But my recommendation is probably there, is that we would add it simply as a walk-on report for the as part of the supplemental.
I'm going to suggest that it be the third supplemental item and be read in. It's a suggestion, and I'm now looking to see if any board members have any concerns or have further suggestions. If there are, I'd like to hear them. If they're not, we'll take it as the third item and read it in and do it orally and then approve or disapprove. So that's my recommendation, supporting what was said by the chair.
It's Doug here. Let's just do it as item 3 in supplemental.
Okay, further?
I agree, Mr. Chair. Mike Brown.
So having heard no objection so far, I'll give it 20 seconds, 15 seconds to see if there's any objection. Hearing none, it will be supplemental item 3. Angela, are you ready to read in what the motion would be? Or the recommendation?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
And it would be that the Board of Directors approve undertaking the mitigation of flood risk project at the Chrysler through the Chrysler Dike integrity assessment at a total of $38,000, at approximate total of approximately $38,500. And further, that the Board of Directors approve signing a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for the 2021 water erosion and infrastructure control funding. I will note as well, I know you're going to have the discussion, but I will note that we do have funding included in the 2020 budget for any SNC match that could be required for that.
Okay, and I'm going to assume that the 38,000 plus HST?
That is correct.
Okay, so you've heard the motion. If there's no suggestion, I would have it read again, and then I would look for mover and a seconder. So is there any suggestion or comment before I ask that it be read in officially?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Angela, would this be the funding application or funding source? Would that be total cost on that 38.5?
Correct. The total cost is 38.5. Coming from the province would be 19,250. Coming from the SNC would be 19,250. 50-50 cost share.
It'd be 19,000. Okay, half from federal.
That's correct. Sorry, provincial.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Further, well, then I have, are there any further questions or comments? Angela, would you please read it into the record, and then I'll look for mover and a seconder.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Recommendation is as follows. The Board of Directors approve undertaking the mitigation of flood risk integrity project at the Chrysler Dike for a total cost of $38,500 plus HST. And further, that the Board of Directors approve signing a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for the 2021 water and erosion control infrastructure funding.
Looking for a mover and a seconder.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Steve Densham will move it.
Steve,
Thompson seconded.
okay, I had Francois quicker, so on my screen, so it would be Steve and Francois. Thanks for all of the people jumping in. Duly moved and seconded. You've heard it read in, you heard it once and heard it read in a second time. I apologize for that, but I think it's a project that's really important to the area, and it's one that we had wanted to have, was refused, and now has been reconsidered. So I think it's a positive move. Any objections? All those in favor? It is carried. So item 3 that was read in supplementary has been carried. We're now moving to the correspondence, and there are 3 letters that you have in front of you. Is there any comment or discussion on these letters? Okay, hearing none. Just for information, going on to number 10, dates of upcoming meetings, the 3rd Thursday at 9, unless otherwise indicated. No July meeting. August 20th, probably virtual. September 17th, hopefully in person. And the draft budget would be coming in November. You see the information in front of you under number 10. Is there any question or comment on any of those? Hearing none. Moving on to number 11, future motions of the board to the board and or discussion of SNC issues. Any question on any of those? Or any suggestions? Hearing none. I just might add that, and I should have mentioned this under my comments at the beginning, I had some concerns about what Conservation Ontario was doing or not doing, and I discussed at the executive meeting and noted that I would give a call to Wayne, Chairman Wayne of Conservation Ontario, and ask him what the direction is. I know it would be difficult for all of the 26 representatives to be on a conference call, etc., but I think that we're a couple of months overdue from the meeting, and I think it's worthwhile that I ask the questions, and I'll report back on that. Does anyone have anything for the good of the cause before we end? And I'll go, Angela, do you?
No, I'm fine for now, Mr. Chair. And reminder, we will do a closed session with a new call number after this, and that will be followed by a Source Protection Committee meeting following that. So we have had a busy day today, but it looks like we are on time to accomplish all we hope to.
All right, I'm going to suggest then, and Carl and Angela is going to correct me in this, that we all are going to sign off in about 10 seconds by hanging up. And I'm going to further suggest that we have a 5-minute respite when everyone gets back in. So it's, I don't know what time it is right now. By my clock, it's about 11:06. So let's say we commence at 11:10, and over the next 8 or so minutes, take a minute and then get checked back in on the new number. Carl, is there anything further we should be aware of?
Mr. Chair, we just probably would, we will have to have a mover and a seconder to go out to go into closed session. So just for air of propriety, we probably don't want to have too much of a break between the start of closed session and the other discussion. So do you think we could maybe do our closed session and then have a break before the SPC? Is that a possibility?
Anything is possible. And so
I might add, I need a break.
Okay. If we need a break, let's do it now, and then we'll do the motion to do our closed session if that's agreeable.
Well, so do you want to do the motion right now, and then we'll go out, and then we'll come back in, and everyone will be back in within the next 6 or 7 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes.
So
and what time does that give us? We're 11:07. We're to go into closed at what time?
11:15.
11:15.
Okay, so we've got 7 or 8 minutes, and people are going to start phoning in the next couple of minutes. So that'll just give people a chance to get in and be accepted. I think we're okay in that. And for the 1 or 2 that need an extra minute, they'll be the last couple coming in. Looking for a motion to go into closed session. Moved and seconded by?
Doug Thompson.
Pierre LaRue moved, seconded by,
Doug Thompson.
I missed the name.
So I have a question.
Okay, before the question, I have Danielle seconded and then the question. Go ahead, George.
The session we're going after, is it call in or it's still on team? That's what I have.
No, it's a call in on the new number. You
It's
were
on
given
Teams.
a
Sorry, Chair Bill. There is a Teams link. There's also a call-in number as a backup as well, but the closed session is on a second Teams link, so it will be exactly the same as this, just on a new call on that new link.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that. Thank you. Sorry.
Everybody clear on that?
Yep.
Okay, and I hope I am. Okay, then all in favor of, or any objection to closed session? All in favor? Approved. We're moving into closed session when we call in and get started in about 6.5 minutes. Thank you very much. You're ready to hang up and then come back in a second. Bye.
And just for those on the recording, the board is going into closed session to discuss property transactions, matters dealing with land.
Michael Brown, City of Ottawa representative.
Is now exiting.
And just a reminder to any staff remaining on the main call that the live stream will continue, so please mute and turn off your cameras. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have lots of people back in for open session. Okay, looks good. And do we have Chair Smurl?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just so you guys are aware, for some reason, the open meeting it wasn't even in my calendar anymore. So I'm not sure if it happened to others as well.
Oh, it went away.
Yeah.
How'd you get back in, other than pure wit?
I had to find it in like my deleted file, but I never deleted it, so I'm not sure what happened.
I sent a kind of summary Hail Mary email last night with both of the links on, so hopefully people are finding it that way too.
I see Chair Smurl. Carl, do you have him to admit? You did? Diane did.
I just say that the Hail Mary was great.
That sounds like Peggy used the Hail Mary to get back in.
I know what it's like with those disappearing invites.
Okay. Do we
Mike
have?
Brown, City of Ottawa representative.
Is now joining.
Okay, so I see Chair Smurl, just for a recap of where we're at, we are just coming back from item number 11, sorry, item number 12, which was our closed session, and we're coming back to have the vote from our closed session, and I will read in the recommendation as soon as Chair Smurl is ready. And Chair Smurl, we can't hear you. I don't know if you are on the line. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
I can hear you, yes.
So you can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I apologize for that. It probably is something I didn't do or did do. Okay, Angela, you were summarizing. We're now at number.
We are now at close. We're coming back into open session to have our vote from closed session item number 12A, which was a closed matter to deal with purchase of land. So at this time, I will read in the resolution for approval of the Board of Directors. So the resolution in our case in the closed session package reads as follows. The Board of Directors receive and file the update on current land acquisitions, and further that the Board of Directors approve the negotiation of the purchase of Property 1 to an upset limit as discussed, plus ancillary costs with the potential of issuing a tax receipt to the appraised value, and further that the Board of Directors decline the offer to exchange lands to acquire Property 2, but staff be authorized to negotiate a potential purchase with the vendor, and that appraised value would be brought back to the Board of Directors for consideration.
Thank you. Looking for a mover and a seconder.
So moved, Mr. Chair, Mike Brown.
And seconded by George. So Mike and George. Is there further discussion? Archie, did you have a question?
Well, that was just I'm sorry, my hand's still up. Nope, I'm good.
Yeah, it's up. It's
Lower
up.
your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much. Then hearing nothing further, is there any objection? All those in favor? And it is carried. That the recommendation that was read into the record a moment ago. All right, we're now looking at adjournment, but we adjourn and stay on for the next meeting. Is that correct, Carl?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
So I'm looking for a motion of adjournment. Moved by George, seconded by Archie. We are adjourned. And we're ready to move into the source protection meeting immediately. Angela or Carl, can you tell me if the other people that are supposed to be on are now on?
Yes, I will have Carl check the list for folks to assure that everyone is on that needs to be. And while he does that, I will just remind board members that have not been privy to a source protection authority to explain how this works. The Conservation Authority does business under the Conservation Authorities Act. And our board of directors actually has a separate role under the Clean Water Act to act as what is called the Source Protection Authority. So the board has two hats to wear, but it's basically the South Nation Conservation Authority Board of Directors doing business as the South Nation Source Protection Authority. So just understand that and why we have two separate meetings as opposed to putting it all onto one agenda. So two different acts and two different boards of directors. Conservation Authority Board of Directors reporting into officially on natural hazards, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and Source Protection Authority Board of Directors officially reporting in to the Ministry of Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Small distinction. And Carl, with that, do we have Phil Barnes with us now?
He's on the call, Phil. Can you hear us and can you give us a check-in, please?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, good to have you on, Phil. Is there anything further? Are we ready to start?
We can go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then I call the this Source Protection Authority meeting to order, and we go to the agenda, which is as item number 1. It's the welcome, and I'm glad you're all with us, and I'm glad that I'm able to hear you at this stage, even though I can't see you. Approval of the South Nation Source Protection Authority agenda, and you have it in front of you, so I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Francois, seconded by Danielle. That we do accept. Is there anything further? And are you ready for the question? All those in favor of the agenda as stated, are there any objectors? All in favor, and it is approved. Declaration of conflict of interest. Is there a declaration from anyone at this stage? Hearing none. Item 4, approval of Source Protection Authority meeting minutes of April the 18th, 2019. And they're on pages 3 to 6. You've had a chance to review them. Is there any question or anything you have? And maybe what I'll do is get the motion first and then have discussion. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder of the minutes of that just relayed the April 18th for 2019.
Moved by Doug.
Doug moved, seconded by Archie. Thank you so much. Open to questions or comments. Are there any questions or comments in any part of the minutes that you have in front of you from pages 3 to 6? Hearing none. Any objection to approval? Hearing none. All in favor, and we approve. So the minutes are approved. We're moving on to the next item, which is new business, annual reporting to the Source Protection Authority. And Phil, you're on, and perhaps Michael. Is Michael on as well?
I don't believe he's on the call, but I'll be presenting his report on his behalf.
Okay, good. So go ahead, Phil first.
Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate what Angela said prior to the meeting, is that the Source Water Protection Program is administered through the Conservation Authority, acting as a Source Protection Authority to help our member municipalities fulfill their provincial obligations to protect their municipal drinking water supplies. Today, I have 2 administrative reports to share. One is a summary of reports that municipalities are obliged to share with this board. And the next is a summary of activity that this board is required to submit to the province. So the first report, which is on page 007, is a report, a summary report from our member municipalities to this board, describing the risk management activities of the prior year. Now, our source protection area has been very fortunate that we were able to achieve most of our source protection goals and implement all of our protective measures very shortly after the source protection plan came into effect. Therefore, there was not much new activity in 2019. We have 99% of the risk management plans throughout the region in place, and 99% of significant drinking water threats have already been considered managed. We do have a few septic inspections that we still need to get to, but those are going to be planned through the Ottawa Septic Office very shortly. There's a table on page 008, which outlines each of our municipalities and shows how many risk management plans we have in place for those municipalities and how many parcels of land are managed through those risk management plans. So the punchline to this report is that our municipalities are well ahead of the curve when it comes to source protection, and that we're doing a good job in our region.
Thank you, Phil. So the recommendation is that the South Nation Source Protection Authority receive and file the municipal annual reporting to the Source Protection Authority. Am I correct?
Correct.
I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, and then we'll open discussion and questions of Phil. Moved by George, seconded by Peggy.
Jerry.
I had Peggy first, Jerry. Thanks.
Okay.
So duly moved and seconded. Open to questions or comments for Phil.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Steve Densham.
Steve.
Hi, Phil, and thanks for your report. So 99%, that's fantastic. I guess the question is the 1%. Is that specific to any particular geographic location?
Yes, there's a small area of land in the city of Ottawa. There's a small drinking water system that supplies a subdivision near Greeley, and there were quite a few septic systems that were captured in that vulnerable area. So it was just a matter of the Ottawa Septic Office getting around to prioritizing those inspections and meeting with landowners to get those done.
That's great. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none. Is there any objection to the recommendation and the motion? Duly moved and seconded. Seeing none. We're all in agreement, so therefore we accept the recommendation. Moving on to the second presentation on page 9, Phil.
Thank you. So the second presentation, the second report is an annual report that the Source Protection Authority is obliged to submit to the province and is also obliged to make public on the website. And it's again, it's an accountability report outlining our progress and any challenges that we've had implementing the Clean Water Act. Again, as per the last report, we're quite ahead of the curve in the province, and we're progressing quite well. We have 99% of our activities managed. We haven't received any significant problems along the way, and we're basically progressing on well, on target, and there's doesn't seem to be anything prohibiting us from completing our tasks.
Anything further to add at this time, Phil?
No, only to add that the following page 9, I guess pages 10 through 19 is the 10-page report that the province provides us the template for to fill out.
Okay, looking for a motion of approval, and then we'll go to questions. Mover? Thank you, Francois. A seconder? Thank you, Pierre. So duly moved and seconded. It's a pretty detailed report and it looks pretty positive. Is that a fair, quick assessment of it, Phil?
I would say it's overwhelmingly positive. We're meeting all of the goals that the Source Protection Committee had set up. There was 3 pillars, if you will, when we decided to take on this source protection, that we would do that they would be effective, appropriate, and fiscally responsible. And all of those 3 pillars or principles have been followed, and I think that the staff and the committee are doing a great job.
Okay, further questions or comments? Hearing none, I have one quick question. Way back a few years ago, I know that reports were brought to each of Raisin and South Nation for approval, but as well, there was a committee made up of executives of both that met from time to time. What was the difference in those 2 meetings? And the ones with the executive have not been going on because I guess they were unnecessary? Comment, Phil?
Yes, thank you. You're correct. So when this work was initialized by the province way back in 2006 or 2005, they decided to group some conservation authorities together for efficiencies of scale. So the technical work and some of the planning work for South Nation and the Raisin region were done together in concert. The province designated one of those conservation authorities as the lead. It was the Raisin was designated as the lead for the project. However, a special management committee, which consisted of the GMs, the chairs, and the vice chairs, was also put in place so that they could negotiate how funds would be spent and divided amongst the conservation authorities, as well as staffing. So there has not been any significant changes in the last 2 or 3 years to the program that have required that committee, that management committee, to meet. But it is there to address any of any issues which may arise from collaboration with the 2 conservation authorities.
So at the present, all that's required is a yearly report to each of our conservation authorities for approval before the final report goes to the ministry. Is that right?
Correct.
Are there further questions from anyone? Then the recommendation has been read and duly moved and seconded. Is there any objection to the recommendation or the motion? Hearing none. All in favor, and the motion is approved. Phil, I think that is the main parts of that. The next meeting to be determined as necessary and probably added on to one of our meetings as per this one. Is that a fair assessment, Angela and Phil?
That's right. That's how we'll do it. And it looks like we're almost adjourned at 12:06.
Phil, do you have any last comments?
No, just to thank you all for your patience and have a great lunch.
And thank you for the reports and also for your patience, because I know you've been waiting since probably more than 10 minutes for us to finish our other meeting. So thank you to all. We're looking for a motion of adjournment. Oh, Peggy, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a brief one. That meeting was held in April and we're like a year plus later. Just curious as to why so long between then and bringing it forward now.
Part of it has to do with our own authority agenda and how we can accommodate the business on the agenda, and with COVID and that we had some pretty full agendas to get through, so we just didn't have room really until this meeting to get it to put the meeting on.
Okay, thanks. I thought maybe Phil went on vacation or something.
No, he's been asking for a meeting for a while, so I finally thought I better get it in before summer.
Okay.
All right, so hearing nothing further, I'm looking for a motion of adjournment at 12:07 PM.
Doug Thompson.
Moved by Pierre, seconded by Doug. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your patience, and I apologize for not being doing whatever I should have done better in that second part, but we got through it. So a good summer to all. We'll be in touch as necessary. I'll keep in touch with the executive, and we will be making announcements about annual meeting and the next bit. The best to all of you, and thank you very much.
Thank
Good evening,
you.
Bill.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Yeah. Take care, Angela.